Creative Magic What's up? This is Sarah Mack and welcome to Creative Magic Club. Together, we'll discover inspirational stories of creative entrepreneurs living out their dreams, doing the work they are most passionate about, and building wealth in magical and fun ways. While building a six-figure income as a writer and coach, helping other women to launch their dream businesses, I've connected with so many incredible people and seen it proven again and again that you can thrive financially doing whatever it is you are passionate about. I'm here to share life-changing strategies for mindset, making money, and reaching more people with your work in a business and life filled with creativity, freedom, and fun. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm so excited to introduce my special guest today. We have with us Isabel Bagsik. She is a soulful brand designer and creative wellness guide. She helps compassionate entrepreneurs, wellness practitioners, magical founders, and revolutionary leaders like you to amplify your work and get paid for your culture-shifting visions. She designs authentic and attention-grabbing brand assets for your website and social media and helps you to prioritize the strategies that bring your creative visions to life while honoring your creative well-being in the process. Isabel's unique methodology incorporates creative rituals, rest practices, and original personalized design strategy. She spent 10 years designing for high-profile businesses like Google and Target and organizations like CAIR, Lead Filipino, and the University of California, Davis, and changemakers like Stephen Curry and Michelle Obama. Hi, Isabel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, I'm so excited to chat with you and be here.
I'm so excited. So Isabel is a previous client of mine, so I know her work really well. She's really magical and amazing. And I have loved, watching her develop these really unique offers and incorporating her wellness practices with her extensive background in brand design and brand strategy. And so I'm really excited for you to get to know her and to dive into some of her magic. So before we do, why don't you tell us a little bit of your origin story? Like, how did you end up doing this work that you do today?
Yes. So I have a culmination of different experiences that came together that guided me to where I am today. But one of the biggest catalysts for starting my own business was actually getting laid off from my job. And what was so amazing was I was doing a lot of internal work. I also had a savings that I was just, growing for whatever might come up. And in that moment when I was being told that I was essentially losing my job, I actually felt this really visceral feeling of excitement and lightness and freedom. Like the universe saying, okay, girl, start your own damn thing. It's time. So that I would say that would be the biggest catalyst. But ever since I was young, I was always creative. I was always drawn to arts and crafts, getting my hands doing things. And it wasn't until I was in the end of my high school, my last year in high school, where I had to start deciding what colleges to apply to, was when I started seriously thinking about my career. And the time when I was young, and then in between that and then high school, I kind of started getting socialized out of being connected with my creativity as a serious thing, and it was just a hobby. And once I got to college, I really started taking it more seriously. I was grateful for the opportunity, but it was challenging because it was a compromise with my dad to double major in computer science. He is a software engineer. I am the first child on both sides of my parents to go to university in America. I have immigrant parents from the Philippines. So it was a lot of firsts, and it was a lot of hesitation and fears and uncertainties around what I was pursuing. But I didn't know at the time, I also had a really strong connection to my intuition. I was doing things, making decisions that seemed illogical, that seemed unsafe, and was just against the norms that I was socialized in my culture, my family, even in my with my peers, where I grew up. But I had just a strong sense that there were certain decisions that were really big, but I knew despite all of the decisions and the voices that were saying otherwise, I knew that the scary action that I knew was right was the one that I would do. For instance, which college I would go to, which course I would study, and so on over those next several years during that time. So I would say it was a lot of this initiation of connecting with my intuition during this choice that I was making for me.
Did you like have fights with your parents, or did they like kind of listen to you when you kind of found that conviction within yourself?
Ooh, um, it wasn't outright fights, I would say, but it was very charged emotions, and it was
Mhm.
really difficult. My last year in high school, it was making these um, decisions and overthinking and just being in my head. And communication is not my parents' strong suit. And I had to unlearn the lack of communication and practice that and bring that into my family as I got older. And it was this courage to say, no, I can't go into this business degree or this other course, this other school that I was accepted into. And have to say really courageously what I desired instead, even though it seemed like the wrong decision, quote unquote. And during the time where I did have the compromise to study computer science, I think it was the second quarter of my first year in college, in my second computer science class ever. I couldn't, it was some other level. I just, my brain could not handle the concepts or that subject. And I think I experienced my first panic attack in a
Mhm.
midterm review session and all these things that I just didn't understand around mental health. And my parents were about to visit me, and I was playing over and over in my mind the night before all the scenarios of what would happen, that I would tell them that I can't do this anymore. And I couldn't sleep. And when I eventually it was at the end of the night, they were about to go back home, and I had the courage to say my truth. And I was so scared, and I was crying. And as the first child of immigrant parents, I did not cry much or cry in front of anyone. So that really scared them, I think, to see me crying in front of
Mhm.
them. And what was so amazing, I'm so grateful for, was that my dad said that I want you to be happy as long as you work hard on whatever you do. I just want you to be happy. And that was such a relief. I had no idea that would ever be the scenario that would happen. And that was a mantra that would stay in my mind those next 4 years, to take that career that I was aspiring to go into so seriously. So that really was the big kind of starting point in my early design career.
Thank you for sharing this story. I love these moments. It's like giving me a flashback to my version of that story of the conversation around college with my mom that I write about in my book. And I think, it's like these become core memories that kind of create the way that we approach things and like what we believe in. And either they, and I think for a lot of us, like I'm similar to you, where it's like, I took it as well. If I'm not going to have the blessing of the people around me to pursue my creativity, or if other people don't believe that I can make it doing creative things, then that just kind of put me in the mindset of, okay, well, I'll figure this out by myself, which then obviously I had to unpack later on and be like, no, like you're not going to do this by yourself. You are going to be able to create support around you. We all need support. It's just going to look different from what, we all wish our parents would just like make life easy for us and like give them our blessings and support us to be who we are. But it's those moments where, yeah, like builds our character. And I'm sure you probably worked harder because of that conversation with your dad. And yeah, I know it takes so much courage to do that, especially I know like this is an overgeneralization, but like Western cultures and Eastern cultures, like Western parents care way less about like what their children do. And they're, it's like, you don't care about me. But I know alternatively, like too much care can also bring like a whole other realm of like pressure that you feel in making these big life choices. And Yeah, especially I know when you have like you've come to America and been through your parents have been through immigration and there's all this other pressure of like, well, you have all these opportunities that your parents gave you and you want to be grateful for that and honor that, but also like, yeah, do your own thing. And I think I think that's a testament to creative people. Like the biggest blessing that we have is that connection to our intuition and
Yes.
it's almost like an incapacity to do things that aren't in alignment for us, like the panic attack
Mhm.
in computer technology is like our bodies outright refuse to do the things
Exactly.
that we're not meant to do, which yeah, can be very challenging, but it's also ultimately a blessing when we learn to listen to that. So I'm really curious because obviously you went on to study design, you've had all this incredible corporate experience in working for big companies and building those skills around brand strategy. And how did you start to kind of develop your wellness practices and like those skill sets that you have like so beautifully brought into your business? Like how did that come about?
Yeah, so I was really involved with the Filipinx American community on campus in college, and there was so much burnout that was happening as I continued to stay involved in those next 4 years, eventually becoming co-president of one of the organizations my last year. And there was a lot of this, and I look back on it laughing with some of my friends from that time, where we would shout at each other as a goodbye, like, okay, take care of yourself, self-care, self-care. And we weren't practicing that. We didn't know what that meant. And so it's something that I kept in mind, especially after graduating and exploring different modalities like yoga and meditation and taking some classes. There was a yoga studio near my home that I started going to. And I think one of the early memories that I have on really diving deep into my wellness practice was in one of my internships for design. I had so much time. It was like very light work. So I had so much time for my brain that I needed my brain stimulated. So I was listening to a lot of podcasts. And one of those podcasts that really was so transformative and pivotal for me was one called Black Girl in Om, led by Lauren Ash at the time. And it was such a beautiful resource around wellness for Black women and women of color and kind of disrupting the wellness industry and talking about spirituality and all these incredible ways around that conversation that really resonated with me. And that just opened up other resources and avenues around wellness that kind of blended in my passion for community, for awareness around cultural identity, and supporting marginalized communities and the issues that they face, or even like the challenges and blocks that they have, even accessing wellness. And that just continued to different local events that I would come across around this same thing, this same conversation that continued to inspire and inform the different passion projects or community events that I would even host and facilitate as well, going into opening up those doors of other people, other creatives, other practitioners locally and across the world.
I love that. So it's been a few months since we worked together, but during that time, we were really looking at bringing these two skill sets of yours together and some really incredible offers. So I'm curious on an update, like, because I know, even with like one client, your process can like very drastically evolve and you can get all these new ideas. So like, where are you now with integrating wellness into like branding and brand strategy with your clients? How's that been going for you, that process of just kind of, allowing it to unfold and really like innovating in that way?
Yes. So I have been so lovingly affirmed by all the things that I would offer, whether it's workshops or a free challenge or even private clients. And just some things that I would hear would be just gratefulness around the foundations of starting sessions or work or projects with mindfulness or with the intuitive branding rituals that we would start off with so that it could help with grounding, that it could help with connecting with their intuition, with getting clear on their true perspectives and voice and stories instead of getting bogged down by all the should haves or the templates or the things that they think that they needed. I remember one client session where she said, "Oh, I didn't prepare my materials and this Google Drive that I could share with you." And I'm like, "Let's pause, let's chill out. We actually don't need all of that right now. And what we really need is already within you." And we did some practices together. And she followed up and she really appreciated that. And we came up with really wonderful um, ideas and ways to refresh her branding. She was doing a whole overhaul for her website and brand identity and social templates that we were putting together for her. And it was so incredible to hear, um, for example, the meditation, what visions that she came up with and how it resonated with her so strongly and tied in with the mood board that she created. So yeah, just really excited for diving deeper into that of this blend. I just graduated and got my certification for mindfulness and meditation teacher. So I'm excited to continue diving deeper into my personal practice and seeing how that continues to inform and inspire my work in the new year. But yeah, I think more spaces for connecting with the body, for reminding others of their sovereignty, of their agency, because we can get often bogged down by external voices and all these things of how we're supposed to show up in business and whatnot. But how do we also create that? What I'm interested in is creating that space for us to listen to our intuition.
Yeah, I love this conversation so much, particularly around branding, because and I think back to when I was like first building my business, and I think I've always kind of been drawn intuitively. Like, I love color. For those of you who follow me, like, you're probably fully aware of this by how I dress. But so that's one thing that I've like always had a strong reaction to. And I think that's been enough to kind of lead me to make a lot of just like intuitively led design choices, even though I don't have a background in graphic design. I'm like, I really am not good at that side of things. I can figure out a thing on Canva. I don't really enjoy doing it. But definitely when I've come to being like, okay, Sarah, you should, right? A should crawls out of the woodwork of like, oh, you're going to the next level. You should change this, or you should, it's like new things need to happen. You need to get more of a refresh. Okay, so what decisions are we making? And then naturally we look externally for, okay, who's succeeding? Like, who's at the next level? Who do I admire? What are they doing? How can I learn from them? And especially with design, I feel like there's all these kind of like unspoken rules about like what's better, like the what you don't want everything to be white. Like, that was a kind of a phase, or you want everything, you just hear these kind of preferences that I don't know, like the design gods have, cast upon all of us. And there's so many little micro decisions to make, like fonts and stuff like that, where when you don't have that visual training, I'm like, I don't know how do I choose a font? They all look the same to me,
Mhm.
But actually doing that work to be embodied in really connecting to your values, what you want to represent, what you want to communicate, like who you're talking to, who you are really, especially when you're a personal brand, because so many of those decisions do stem from our unique identities. So it's such a beautiful process to use that branding process to really reflect and connect to yourself, to be really intentional around how you want to be represented. And I think, especially in this age that we're in, there's people like you and I and who are in this community, and we're creating new identities that haven't been seen before. It's like I just brought the word witch more into my branding vocabulary, and I had a lot of resistance around that in the past because, like, I don't know, have you seen Roald Dahl's film The Witches?
No, I have
It's
not.
really creepy. So Roald Dahl, I think he's British, but it's kind of like twisted, dark, like creepy children's stories. And the movie is like terrifying. Like it's a children's movie. But my brother was like having nightmares about it. We watched it when
Mm.
we were young. And so we always used to like tease each other and pretend that we were like the witches. Like they had, like bald heads and they all wore wigs and they like turned children into little rats and things like
Hmm.
that. And like my brother would always call me a witch as an insult. And like witches really have had a bad rap. Obviously, like they were all burnt at the stake for centuries, like women have been punished for our magic for a long time. And there's, parts of our DNA that remember that. But, or I've associated it with like the witch is on a broomstick and like a black
Hmm.
cape and a dark hat and like a long green nose with like a wart on it. And I'm like, no, but it's a word that speaks to our magic. And I'm not like I used to dress like a goth and a punk when I was younger, but I'm very different in my style now. And I'm like, yeah, like I get to recreate a version of what like a magical witch is. And I'm developing that identity for myself. And I don't maybe necessarily have a clear vision, but just allowing myself to lead with what feels right for me, lead with what is expansive and creatively inspiring to me, and making those choices in my branding. And already I can see people are responding to that. They're like, oh, I love your new like witchy stuff that you're like embracing, or like this is really speaking to me. And I had a whole
Hmm.
conversation with my branding coach about it. Like, will this turn some people off? And it's like, yeah, when we make those choices, it is going to turn some people off, but it's going to turn your people on even more. And like, that's the purpose of making these choices, which is really what branding is. It's like a billion different choices that communicate information about you. So I think it's such a cool experience, to be helping people build out their identities and how they want to be represented. And especially as like women and more marginalized groups that haven't necessarily been visually represented in the ways that feel authentic or feel inspiring to us. So I really love that you're bringing these very embodiment focused practices into this conversation, because it's so much more about the color. It's so much more than the font.
Hmm.
So I'm curious, like, what are some common things that you see people sort of getting stuck around or coming up against that you wish people kind of had a different perspective on that, or you have some words that would make things easier for people when they are making those decisions?
Yes. So I loved all that you brought up. And one of the things that is coming to mind with this question is the logo. You are not your logo. I see a lot on threads of people asking about, are there any logo designers out there? And I don't deep dive into each person's account, but if you're new in your business or you're refreshing your branding, I would put that last priority because there's so much more to your business than just the logo. Once you have a logo, but you don't have other parts of your business and branding that aren't cohesive or feel true to you or clear, then that is just not going to be working for you. It's not gonna, you're gonna have a pretty logo, but other than that, is it going to make much difference of attracting in clients or letting people know who you are, your values, what you do? Probably not. And so that's something that I want to name. Don't worry about your logo yet. And I haven't even done that yet. Mine is simply my brand font that just spells out my brand Unconventional Bliss, and that's it. Maybe one day I want to illustrate it, but for now I'm good because there are other parts of my business that I want to play with and focus on. And what you can, uh, focus on when it comes to, let's say, the visual brand identity itself is your fonts and colors and have that cohesive. Oftentimes I've had a couple of sessions with folks, and one I noticed that they had a bunch of colors that they had in their brand color palette and were playing around with quite a handful of fonts. And the color palette that they had that they were working with, I'm like, okay, I know that we need to cut down on this because there are some that are too close to even, that we don't need each shade, each little hue of the same color. So how can you simplify this for you? And maybe if you are new to this, starting out with maybe around like 5 colors, let's say. No more than 10. 10 is way too much. I would say let's start with a foundation of 5. And then with fonts, I would say, having 2 to 3, one for sure that is legible when it is in a longer paragraph. So, not having that in script or cursive. And then you can have a stylized one that could be for your headers and titles. But those are some foundational suggestions that I would share for those who are brand new to the branding world or who are uncertain of where to start. Those are typically what I see as the common things that people are struggling with or have challenges with or have too many things that they're testing out. And because of that, I often hear the issue of changing their fonts and taking hours to pick a font and then changing it again in the next month or so. And so all of those hours wasted on like picking a font that you're going to change anyway could have been to actually selling your offerings, could have been to actually, connecting with your community or to having a session with a client. So that these are some things that are common that how do you save time for yourself? Again, thinking about what are the main things that you can focus on your branding, and then having the courage, the energetic space, having the courage of actually sharing it with people and be visible and be seen, because otherwise people won't be able to find you if you're not actually showing up, connecting with people, talking about your work. Um, and one last thing around that is because some folks are still unclear with their branding or it's not cohesive or they're not sure about where they're at. There is this lack of confidence around talking about the work because they don't feel proud about their branding. And so getting clear about what is it that you want to convey to your audience or who do you want to connect with, and having that be kind of that North Star to guide you on how you want to represent your work in the digital realm.
Yeah, I love this conversation and these insights that you shared because I've definitely, been of the mind in the past of like, oh, it's not super important to have a website or it's not super important to have fancy branding or for everything to be beautiful. And because I've seen many examples of entrepreneurs who are literally like making seven figures and all of their stuff is hosted on a Google Doc, with like no branding. So, there's a spectrum, right? You can keep it really simple. And I think the message that we want to take from this end of the spectrum is stay focused on what matters most, which is you sharing your work, you having conversations with people, you connecting with clients, you making an impact. However, I think I think personally, especially when you're a personal brand, the thing that matters most about your branding, like you said, is that you feel good sharing it. And
Mhm.
recognizing that like everyone feels slightly different when it comes to their visual representation. Like obviously there are some people who like literally don't care about that. And so they can build a successful business without necessarily caring or putting effort into that. But if you're someone who values visual beauty, right? And we can look in people's astrology charts to find out how important this is for different people, but for yourself, right? Like you said, if you're feeling embarrassed to share something or you feel something isn't good enough, I think there's definitely a fine line with like, don't be comparing yourself with like super successful, well-established brands who probably have marketing budgets and branding budgets of like squillions of dollars, but also knowing like what are those moves that you can make? What are the most important things that you can do so you're not like wasting a ton of time, wasting a ton of energy on things that aren't necessarily moving the needle for you, but that give you something that represents you in a way that makes you feel good about it. Like I genuinely believe that especially for like especially for women and like people who are stepping into business, doing our soul work, doing things that we really care about, that are really meaningful for us, that we're kind of sensitive around potentially being judged or rejected around, like having that asset online, that beautiful, social media graphic or like photo for your profile picture or that website page, no matter how simple and no matter how, skilled you are, no matter how much budget you have to be able to start to create something like that, if it makes it feel more real for you and it creates more embodiment in your own work, like that is the true value. of this work to me. When
Yes.
you feel
Hmm.
excited to go out and be more visible and to share it, like making choices that get you to feel that feeling, that's the highest priority. And that can be achieved relatively simply, and I think
Hmm.
obviously having guidance of someone who knows how to point you in the direction of what it is that you need for the particular phase of business that you're in. Um, but yeah, so it's like it is important. It's not everything, but
Hmm.
knowing where you fall on that spectrum is really, really important, and making sure it's not from a place of comparison and perfectionism, but more what makes me feel really proud to go out there and to be visible and to shine my light and to share my work with people.
Yeah,
So
exactly. I totally love what you're naming there. And even I, working with you, had a sales page on a Google Doc and I had clients through that. And I love what you were saying. And I've noticed this too, those who have really simple branding or doesn't have the shiny fancy branding, that's also their brand. They have
right,
like a
right,
cohesive, like they're just doing a screenshot of their notes app and that's their post.
right.
On their Instagram, that's a carousel and thinking about, okay, is your brand cohesive? Are you the person who does the screenshots of their notes app and then just posts it? And that is a recognizable brand. And so thinking about the cohesion too of whatever spectrum of degrees of design and how dynamic it is or simple, is it cohesive in all areas where you show up? And that also creates that sense of safety that you can trust, like, okay, that's them, that I can recognize them and I know that that's how they show up. And it creates this sense of connection and recognition too. So I love what you're naming too.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. It's like you're communicating, you know, you are communicating whether you're doing it with intention or not. So it's about
Yes.
really taking that step back and having that outsider's perspective and being like, how is this landing with people?
Hmm.
Like, what am I communicating? Am I communicating to the people that I want to be communicating to? Are they getting the message? Because yeah, it's so hard. We're so close to our own work and our mission
Hmm.
and our vision that it's it's so important to have creative collaborators in this journey to be able to pull out those aspects of your story, of your personality, of your energy, and to be able to make sure that that message is loud and is cutting through the noise and is getting to the people that you want to reach. So I love this conversation. We could talk about it all day. You're
Hmm.
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us, and tell people like what have you got going on? Where can they find out more about your work?
Yes. Well, thank you again for having me and just so grateful that we've worked together. It truly did make so much of a difference in my business of getting clear in my copywriting and clear with my messaging too, and helping with my branding, thinking about my branding in that way. So really appreciate your gifts and you bringing your magical self even more to your work. So thank you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah. And for those listening, I am Isabel Bagsik. Once again, I'm a Filipino American soulful brand designer and creative wellness guide. And if any of this resonated or you're curious, feel free to connect with me on Instagram. And if you are curious to learn more about these branding rituals that I have guided folks through, I do have a free 3-day email series called the Intuitive Brand Refresh, which I actually did work with Sarah on to put together. And it was so amazing when I did the live version. So these intuitive branding rituals, you get the ritual and the prompts delivered straight to your inbox, one a day, and really helping you elevate your online branding and connect with your soul clients and community.
Amazing. Yeah, I know you were super successful with that. Obviously, people can't get enough of your amazing work. And your website and handle is Unconventional Bliss.
Yes.
Awesome. Just want to make sure we speak that out for people who are
Thank you.
too lazy to look for links. Thank you so much. This has been so great. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Please share this episode far and wide, especially with people who you know can benefit from it. And we will see you next week. Thank you so much for being here, Isabel. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Are you a healer, witch, creative, or magical entrepreneur who's ready to fill your high ticket one on one or group coaching program? and you want a sales page that will do the selling for you. Maybe you're tired of having a calendar full of sales calls and you want a sales page that can clearly articulate your offer and guide interested clients to feel ready to buy without needing to talk to you first. Maybe you already have a sales page and people are clicking on it but not reaching out, and you want to feel clear on what to say and what not to say to turn interested people into actual buyers. Having sales pages for my offers has led to filling a high-ticket group coaching program with 10 clients at $1,000 each while traveling on vacation for 2 weeks and launching using repurposed content. Having 5-figure months from sales into my $5,000 evergreen mastermind with no live launching beyond daily social media content. Signing clients into my $17,000 private mentorship program with no sales calls. When you book my Cosmic Sales Intensive, you'll walk away with a full, clear, compelling sales page for your high-ticket offer that will attract ready-to-buy clients and that you can continue to make sales with for years to come. Clients who have been through this offer have created a sales page that went on to sell out a high-ticket relationship coaching mastermind, had 20 applications within 48 hours of publishing, sold several $15,000 private mentorship packages, and even had a 6-figure launch with the sales page and content strategy we created within just a few weeks. Stop losing people with fluffy language that sounds the same as so many others in your industry, and clearly articulate why your work is worth $5,000 to $10,000 plus, even when you sell things like astrology, human design, breathwork, mindset coaching, or energy work. Book your Cosmic Sales Intensive now at withsarahmac.com or via the link in my description.